The border will continue to stay shut. Mass deportations will continue. The largest tax cuts in American history for middle-class Americans that President Trump signed into law last year will be going into effect this year. So hardworking Americans will start to see that money going back into their pockets. The full weight of President Trump's economic agenda, everything that he and his economic team have been doing over the course of the last year, is really going to come to fruition this year. And I think you're going to see an economic boom.
White House Press Secretary with predictions about 2026, at least Q1, Q2, about the economy as you head into the midterms of 26. As our last Fox News poll asked people about whether this was a good year or a bad year, you see 2025 good at 35%, bad at 65%, but clearly better than recent years. It splits definitely along party lines, how you look at it. So let's bring in our panel and look at the new year and some of the stories that we're covering at the end of this year. Trey Gowdy, former congressman from South Carolina, host of Sunday Night in America with Trey Gowdy, Democratic strategist Megan Hayes, and Tom Bevan, Real Clear Politics co-founder and president. You know, Tom, there is going to be this focus on the economy. It has to be for this administration. They've been dealing with a lot of foreign policy issues, but as you head into the midterms, that's what will drive the day. A lot of them are talking about a big surge in Q1, Q2, and we'll see if it happens.
We will. And look, some of the recent signs have been good. GDP number was good. Jobless claims are down. So there are some positive signs. Trump finished the year with a 43.4% job approval rating in our Real Clear Politics average. He was 41 on the economy and only 36% on inflation. So there's still work to be done there. And part of this, Brett, is about emphasis. I mean, for every event that Donald Trump does on foreign policy or anything else, he should be doing 3 or 4 events highlighting wage growth and the economy and all these things, because just telling people that things are going to get better, just hang on, that's not good enough. The American people need to see him in action and his team in action every single day.
Yeah, because, Megan, Democrats could not say the word affordability more than they did in the past few months.
Yeah, that's right. And it was very successful for them. They won a lot of races since the 2024 election. We won 2 major governor's races, as well as a lot of down ballot races. So, you know, I think that Democrats have a very good message heading into the midterms here. But I think one thing that's very bright light for Democrats especially is the issue of health care and affordability and how that all mixes together. People's health care costs are going to go up starting tomorrow, and people are going to be able to afford less with groceries and gas and every other part where they're being squeezed. So Democrats cannot talk about affordability solutions enough if they want to continue to win in the midterms.
Trey, how do you see it?
I think the number one thing on the agenda is keep the House, or else you're going to be impeached. He was impeached as many times as every other American president combined in his first term. So he's going to be impeached again if they lose the House. And if they don't hold the Senate, he's not going to get any judges or U.S. attorneys. So number one on the agenda list, don't get impeached, keep the House, keep the Senate.
You know, this Minnesota fraud investigation has been expanding, and I think it's going to go to other states. The Hill writes that Comer announces hearings. The first hearing is set for January 7th. State reps Kristen Robbins, Walter Hudson, Marion Rarick scheduled to testify. Comer also invited the governor, Tim Walz, the Attorney General Keith Ellison to testify. Walz's office says the governor is happy to work with Congress through this committee, though this committee has a track record of holding circus hearings that have nothing to do with the issue at hand. Here's one of the providers speaking out about the fund freezing at an event today. Take a listen.
If childcare is cut, I'm unable to work or go to school. I understand fraud is bad.
Not sure what happened there at the end, Trey. I admit that she thought that was not supposed to be in there, but fraud is bad, and it's a bad issue publicly for the Democrats in Minnesota as they talk about it.
Yeah, I think the issue that Republicans don't talk about enough is this is what you get when you have massive federal government. The bigger something is, Brett, the more places it has to hide. So if this were Minnesota tax dollars we were talking about, Tim Walz would be running for his life. But it's not. It's money from Florida and Texas and South Carolina. And we've just accepted this level of fraud that most Americans don't accept at all. So there have already been convictions. There'll probably be more. But the metaphor here is the smaller the federal government is, the less places you have to hide.
This is dangerous politically, Megyn, because it really makes people mad.
Yeah, absolutely. Fraud is a terrible thing. It should be weeded out in every state, just like it is in red states as well as it's in blue states. I think part of the issue here is the governor's team let the narrative get away from them when they have solid footing to talk about. This is not a new issue for the state of Minnesota. There's been over 59 people convicted. The Minnesota Star Tribune wrote 300 stories in the last 4 years. Walz has done a ton of activity of hiring an outside firm to audit different things and to hire new people to do oversight. So this is not a new issue for the folks in Minnesota. The rest of the nation is just catching on for political reasons, which is fair because fraud is bad and it should be weeded out.
Yeah.
But I don't think we should overstate here what's going on.
It might not be a new issue, Tom, but it's a new number. I mean, if you're up to $18 billion or whatever the billions of dollars, you're talking about one state. I mean, we could be digging into many states where it's astronomical.
Right, and that's the thing. I mean, this is one of those stories that it may have been going on locally, but you know, it finally is coming into sort of real view and full view for all the American public to see. And to your point, Brett, we've already seen stories in Ohio and California and Washington State. I mean, this is spreading. It's spreading quickly. And I think there is going to be a full accounting. And if you can imagine how much waste there was in the federal government, as Trey just mentioned, and we got a peek of that with DOGE at the beginning of this year. Just imagine how much waste and fraud is going on at the state level, particularly in some of these larger states.
All right, you have a new New York mayor as of midnight, Trey, Democratic Socialist Mamdani. What do you think happens?
I think the whole story is about as exciting as the movie The English Patient. I'm just bored to tears. I mean, here's the thing. I mean, if you live in New York, you care. If you don't live in New York, you already know socialism is going to fail. The highlight of his tenure will be when he is sworn in. He's not going to be able to do any of the things he promised to do. We know socialism doesn't work. So good news for South Carolina. We're going to get a lot of new people moving down here, a lot of new businesses. Look, I like New York. I got friends that live there. My employers are there. But for the rest of the country, we've seen this movie before.
Megyn, Democrats worried about the start of this new administration?
I don't think so. I mean, he needs to learn how to be the mayor, right? Get the snow removed, get your trash removed before he can do any of the policies that he had campaigned on. So we'll see how far it goes. I think when he met with Trump sort of took a lot of the air out of the balloon of making him the Republican boogeyman. So I think he has a lot that he can prove here. But I mean, he's the mayor of New York. He's not the president of the United States.
All right, quickly, some New Year's resolutions down the road. Tom, you're first.
My original resolution was to move to Minneapolis and start a daycare center, but I think that ship might have sailed, so I'm going something a little closer to home, a little more positive thoughts this year, Brett. I'm going to play to my gosh darn handicap in golf. There's nothing like you go out there and you have to tell people you're a 5 and you play like a 15. So I'm going to work on my game this year and try to play to my handicap.
I like it. Megyn.
Yeah, I'm going to try to spend more time out of Washington, get outside the bubble, spend more time on vacation, and touch grass a little more than I did last year.
I like that. All right, Trey.
Boy, it's a lot to choose from, Brett, but I've settled on this. I'm going to eat more, I'm going to work out less, and I'm going to watch more television, and I'm going to try to do them all three at the same time.
I like that.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.